Ayurveda and yoga are sister science, right? That date back 5,000 years back, 5,000 years. So we want to understand that how Ayurveda and yoga work in harmony. That is what the topic is today. How do you have the classical yoga and Ayurveda and make it so beautiful for your day-to-day life? So Mileni, she is a classical yoga and Ayurveda expert in New York City, and she's going to be joining me. So hang on for 1 second, and we will talk about how you can combine yoga and Ayurveda on a day-to-day life, right? So she should be joining in 1 second. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi,
Namaste.
namaste. I'm good. How are you? Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
Great, great, great. Yes. So I think it's an amazing topic. All of us, people all over the world are doing yoga now, because there's so much research behind yoga and the benefits of yoga. And I love that you are trying to combine the two, right? The yoga and Ayurveda. And I love it. And tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will go into how these benefit us.
Sure. Yeah, like my history. Um, I found yoga asana when I was 14, just kind of by accident. It was like a happy accident. And then I just kind of practiced it basically until I was in my mid-20s when I learned to become a teacher. And then when I started going to India to study, I kind of came upon an Ayurveda book like in a bookstore. And I come from a medical family, like an allopathic medical family, and I think I was trying to go a different direction. And then um, Ayurveda helped answer some questions that yoga was bringing up, like the whys and hows
Mhm.
of the instructions from the texts. So I realized in studying both of them separately that they actually really inform each other.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how I've been practicing since.
Sure, sure. And you talk a lot about classical yoga, right? I was reading on your blog, you talk about the science behind the relationship between the mind, body, and bridge. But so how do you kind of combine it all together between yoga and Ayurveda?
So I find that like the I have found in the United States especially that um, because there is not a strong connection to like the reasons that we're practicing yoga, it becomes a very external experience, and also the United States is a very external place. So so I think what I was noticing happening in the classes that were happening around me was a lot of stuff being like put on top of yoga to create a sensual and internal experience,
Mhm.
or like symbolize that experience. And I was like, oh, but the text can tell you how to do that. Like we don't have to add essential oils. We don't have to add things on top. Like it's there.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I mean by classical, is that like there's nothing outdated about either of these two sciences, yoga and Ayurveda. They're so modern. I mean,
Mhm.
they're old, they were created a long time ago, but they're created by rishis, so like they're timeless. And so I think that's what I've been exploring too. I mean, I also have always been interested in primary source information and wanting to know, like, well, who said that and where does that information come from? And so
Mhm.
sorry, my internet's not so good. Yeah, when teachers who showed me those relationships, it really empowered me to keep looking for the nuance. And so I feel like when we practice Ayurveda and yoga, like the way that they're written,
Yeah.
um, it's actually like really strengthening to the relationship of the practitioner, because you can realize it's all like within you and there's nothing to add, and there's not that much that anyone can do for you actually, because it's
Yeah,
you.
no, no, I agree. I mean, and I grew up in India, but I never did yoga on a daily basis. But quite honestly, here in US, yoga has become so prevalent. So you go to yoga classes, but some of them are kind of, according to the US, right? The way you said, because I think everything gets modified. The Chinese food gets modified,
Yeah.
all the Italian food gets modified, and you go to Italy and it's different. So that's just the interpretation. But let's just talk about the classical, how you combine classical yoga and
Mm.
Ayurveda. Just give us an example in your class, or you do it in the daily practice? How does it work?
So like in a yoga class setting, I'll often teach from the gunas instead of from, which are like the 20 qualities, like that are combinations of 10 opposites. So like hot, cold, fast, slow. And I find that this is really useful because when we teach asanas, like the postures, and it's completely external, like move your arm here, externally rotate, it keeps the attention on the external body. Like after a point, at the beginning, like learning how to lift your arm is actually kind of hard. Proprioception is challenging to develop, but once it develops, we need to start engaging with prana, which is internal. So by using the gunas from Ayurveda, it allows us to see that we can like move prana differently just by changing the intention of the quality. So like the sequence could be exactly the same, but the way that it's done will change the effect on the guna, which then may have effect on dosha. So that's one way. And then another way, especially I do this when I'm teaching trainings, is like paying attention to the time of day and the season of the year, and then asking the practitioners to pay attention to the season they are in their life, and then the circumstances of their life, and then modifying the qualities relative to those to create a balance. And then the other way that I like to do it is, because yoga is so much about discernment, and the longer I've been practicing, the more I'm like, oh, it's just like seeing that there's always a choice. Like freedom is like a choice. And so like teaching and encouraging practitioners to like really decide, like, do I want to do this smoothly, or do I want to do this with a roughness, and then like have a reason why. It starts to allow the practitioner to have like a really personal experience on the mat. And then this is the same thing that I do with like clients who I'm seeing for like Ayurvedic consultation, but it's a little bit less like poetic in that way.
So it's like, so prana is the breath, right? You're talking about the prana as the breath, correct? I just want a lot of you. And the guna, right? The guna is when you said the word prana and guna. So just give us an example. Let's say, we are used to going, okay, go downward dog, and then you go this. Okay, there's a question also. It just kind of flew away because someone else joined. But how does it work? Just give us an example of a sequence. Just 2 or 3 asanas, and then what the breath would be, and how does the guna and prana kind of come together?
Sure, that's a great question. Okay, so like if we imagine downward dog, the hands are forward and the legs are backward and the tailbone's in the air. So what I would normally say is like push the heels of the hands down and forward, because it creates like an end point for the posture, and then push the balls of the feet down and backward. And then as you're breathing, make sure the breath is like slow and smooth and warm, and see if you can direct it to move on the inhale from the hands to the feet, and on the exhale from the feet. So you start to feel the body as a container, and then you start to feel prana. And then what I've noticed happen is that after you set up the beginning and the end of the posture, like in down dog, like hands and feet, you can start to engage like the way you feel prana, like meet the external shape. So like you can breathe into your back, or you can breathe into your shoulders. You can breathe into these like subtle spaces that there are no lungs there. And that is kind of what I also mean by prana. So like it's fueled by breath, but it's also sort of different.
Got it. And do you also combine like pranayama, right? Pranayama, you used to talk about pranayama, but prana, but pranayama is about breathing practice. So what I'm trying to understand is, let's say we all do yoga classes, but pranayama is not necessarily included in the yoga classes, right? So are you combining the other pranayama as well?
Yeah. And we talk about this sometimes in the training. So like there are all these different breathing techniques, like Kapalabhati, which is like the quick inhale, exhale, which in many ways is very rajasic. It's very active. It can aggravate vata. But there are also ways to do it that can be, like we don't all have to practice Kapalabhati at 700 miles an hour. Some people can do it slower. And by doing Kapalabhati slower, like instead of, right, it changes the guna. And so therefore it will change the dosha. So like someone in their 70s might benefit from Kapalabhati, but not the fastest version. So that's where I find Ayurveda is really helpful, because it helps us see like, oh, it's not just like either you do Kapalabhati or you don't, or you do Bastrika or you don't.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you modulate it so that you and your personal gunas can actually find like a balance?
It's like a personalized yoga practice.
Yeah. And like in a group setting. So like you don't have to have, if you have the tools of Ayurveda, I think you don't need to have a private yoga class, because every class is personal.
All right, so let's talk about the connection of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is very deep, right? It talks about daily rituals, it talks about seasonal rituals, right? Dinacharya, Ritucharya. How do you combine that in a class, or do you tell them, okay, on a daily basis, these are the things that your clients or your class people who take that do this?
So it's both. Like in a yoga asana setting, I'll mostly talk about dinacharya, ritucharya, like on a bigger scale, like it's spring season. So we're going to modulate the sequence to reduce the qualities of heavy, slow, dull, or kapha dosha. Usually I'll stick with gunas. And then, if it's like the summer season, I'll explain why we're going to be moving slower so that we don't aggravate pitta or vata, like that. And then also just like the simple dinacharya in relationship to yoga, like why you don't eat or drink before a yoga class, like what is it actually doing to you? And then that allows us to get into the conversation of ama, and like showering, like when to shower, when to use oil, and why and when not to. Or like someone posted today about like when you shouldn't eat khichdi, because like khichdi has become like the fall to substance. So it's actually kind of slimy. So not good for everybody. And then in a personal consultation, like just pure Ayurveda, then it's like very, very specific dinacharya, ritucharya, which would include like spices to avoid, like how to cook, what to eat, when to eat, like that kind of thing.
Got it. Okay, so someone's asking a question about fatty liver. I'm sorry, we are talking about Ayurveda and yoga, how to combine this together on a daily basis. So if there are any comments on questions on that, you're welcome to ask or comment. What else would you like to tell viewers?
I think that one of the things that I love about you, like bringing Ayurveda and yoga together, is that they're called sister sciences, like you said, and I feel like they really support each other, because they both are based around creating a harmonious relationship with the environment. Like Ayurveda is like the personal environment with the larger environment more so. And then yoga is like recognizing that your body is an environment for your soul. And they all sort of benefit from creating and it's like a relative harmony, like the Bhagavad Gita says, like yoga is equanimity in action. So it's like, it's not static. And like the minute we think it's static, we're sort of screwed. And they also both teach like us how to fix the parts, to serve the whole, and there's no quick fix to like the whole. And so they help us like find nuance and then realize that things that are subtle are not actually that subtle. And one of the things that I think is kind of interesting is that like the goal of yoga is like self-realization, and the goal of Ayurveda is like comfortableness in the body, like sukha. And then they both have these goals of swastha, like stability in the self, from like different angles. But when the person is comfortable in the body, then it's a lot easier to go onto the path of yoga. I mean, yoga does that too. That's like why the 8 limbs exist. The 7 other limbs exist. But it helps, when we're not distracted by like my stomach hurts or I have a headache. Like it's a lot easier to think about things that are not tangible.
Yeah. No, I think so. Bringing Ayurveda into day-to-day life and combining it with yoga and understanding your personalized constitution and practicing it, to your point, with the breath, right, which is the prana, and the guna is like the quality, right, in English, and then it can be a beautiful experience. And what would be a simple day, like you wake up, just your morning? Just explain us your morning. In the morning, what would you do? Just a simple routine.
In the morning, my personal routine when I'm not rushing is like I wake up before the sunrise, and like then everything is slow, but it's kind of clear. And then I'll wake up, I will brush my teeth and scrape my tongue and take a shower. Then I'll do my morning meditation once I'm clean and my senses are sharp. And then I'll have some hot water, and then I'll have breakfast, and then I'll start with the work. But I try and get all of the subtle stuff done before the sun rises, because it's a lot easier to be like quiet. And then when the sun rises, it's like you got to go.
Sure. All right. Any questions, any feedback? I know people are asking questions, but they have to be relevant. I'm so sorry to Ayurveda and yoga, what we are talking about. So do you see any question that is relevant?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I'm just scrolling. Take panchakarma therapy along Ayurveda. Yeah.
So talking about panchakarma, and so panchakarma, the detoxification therapy, which is very, very different than we are talking about on day-to-day basis of incorporating yoga and Ayurveda into your life. Most of us have incorporated yoga, right? We do yoga practice, but the thing is, if you incorporate Ayurveda, which is a personalized medicine, which I call it personalized natural medicine, I should say, and see the effect it has on your body, it'd be beautiful. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
No, I just think that they both, like, Ayurveda is like a really wonderful way to practice like finding small harmonies to create like a big experience of harmony. And so when we put those things that we practice like in the kitchen, like on the yoga mat, it can really complement that experience.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sera, for educating all of us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye. And everyone, thank you so much for supporting us. Bye now.
Bye.